On this edition of Native Report, we go underground and visit the American Indian Records Repository.
What are the risks?
We visit a video shoot featuring actor Randolph Mantooth, and we attend a powwow at the Lincoln, Nebraska Indian Center. We'll also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
We're proud of our young people when they graduate.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacey Thunder. 80 to 90 feet below the hills of Lenexa, Kansas, is another world many may not know exists. Various companies are located in a subterranean facility carved from limestone, and one of these is the American Indian Records Repository.
"30 minutes from Kansas City is Lenexa, home to one of several underground facilities used within the state of Kansas for business and storage purposes. To access the American Indian Records Repository, you drive into a hill.
Our job function here is to receive and store the Native American records from across the United States, all the federal records, and then also some of the tribal trust records we have here that we store. Back in the 70s, these were some old limestone mines, and they mined them, but they mined them in a way that they could be able to use them for storage or for office space. Through the years of the litigation and even today, there was a need to be able to centrally locate all of the Indian fiduciary trust records to be able to support the research efforts for the litigation. And our records were spread throughout the nation in the FRCs, where the local offices would retire their records to the nearest FRC near them. So it was decided by the Office of the Secretary to build this facility in a central location and be able to have one location for all of the Indian fiduciary trust records to be located. And so in 2003, NARA and the Department of Interior met and came up with the idea to build this facility here underground alongside with the other NARA storage centers where they store other records. NARA is National Archives Records Administration, and the FRC, I'm sorry, the acronyms,
No problem.
is a Federal Records Center.
The litigation TAP references is Cobell v. Salazar, one of the largest class action lawsuits in American Indian history regarding the mismanagement of thousands of individual Indian money accounts. The facility is generally closed to the public, but individuals can gain access by going through the proper channels. I know you don't allow a lot of crowds in here, but how can a person get a tour of this facility?
What they would need to do is contact the director of the Office of Trust Records and give the names of the individuals and the dates in which they would like to come here for a tour, and then the director would decide whether or not to grant authorization. Once she grants authorization, she lets me know so that I can inform our guard, and then the guard actually would allow them to come in, but they would be escorted for a tour. First thing we do is we show them a video of how to properly handle our records. And then also they sign a research agreement. and that agreement is basically listing out the procedures that they need to follow. Some of the, also near the records, when they're around the records, there's no drinks, there is no tobacco of any type, there is no chewing gum, no hand lotion, so there's nothing around the records that could harm them. No pens, no highlighters, no markers can be allowed. We store here the records from the Bureau of Indian Education and their functions, the Office of Special Trustee, of course, for American Indians. Also, we have Indian Education records, Office of Judicial Services records, which are law enforcement that are out on the Indian reservations. And we also store here records for the Secretary, the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, and also the trust-related records for our solicitors' offices. Those types of records could be financial, of course, education, high school transcripts, marriage certificates, death certificates, all the types of personal information of people who have been enrolled. This is just an old ledger that records some of the older transactions and investments made, but you can see how brittle it is and due to its age. So these looks like these are investments. The records here are maintained in archival standards, and the temperature is at 60 degrees. The humidity is controlled to protect them. Also, the air is filtered several times a day. You know, we are underground, so we're safe away from any type of natural disaster or tornado won't affect us down here. If someone wanted to get a copy of maybe their great-grandmother's marriage license or some death certificate or something to try to trace back their history, what they would do is they would go to their nearest Bureau of Indian Affairs office and do a research request, and that would be sent to us, and I have a staff here that actually does research, and we would do the research, see if we could find the information, and then we would release that information back to the BIA. We only release information back to the owners of the records. We don't release it to the public. If someone wanted to, do that without going through the BIA, then they would have to send us a Freedom of Information request.
Depending on the employee's workload, responses to requests usually happen within 48 hours, but no more than 5 days after they are received.
This area here is the space where the boxes are actually, the information is being taken out of the box, off of the files, and actually entered into a database so that in the future we would be able to retrieve, for research purposes, we would be able to know where to go to look for the documents that are being requested. All of our boxes, when they get here, have a barcode put on them and are scanned to a physical location so that at any given time we know where a box resides. So I always tell the staff our rule is within 5 minutes we locate a box. This is the dock, and this is where all the boxes are actually received from the field. And also this is where the boxes, well, when they come in from the field, they come in here and they're put on these stacks over here, is what we call the stacks, to be weighted, to be indexed. We did have about a couple months ago, a couple of tribal guys come in and do some research, and they were surprised that there's not more tribes that actually come in for research. It's a facility to be able to preserve the history. You know, I heard one person say before, we're building a legacy. We have the records here that have shown, they show for future generations they will be here to show the workings of the federal government as far as what was being done for Native Americans. We preserve the past and educate the future.
Did you know that when Nebraska was admitted to the Union as a state, there were an estimated 10,000 Indians in the territory? At the time, the Omaha tribe numbered between 900 and 1,000 and occupied the country along the Missouri River. The Pawnee lived on the south bank of the Platte River and were 4,000 to 5,000 strong. The Oto people were in the southeastern part of the state, numbering 800 to 1,000. The other tribes in Nebraska at the time included the Santee Sioux, the Winnebago, the Ponca, the Iowa, and the Sac and Fox. In the late 1870s, the Ponca were removed from Nebraska to the Indian Territory that became Oklahoma. However, after a few years, several of the Ponca returned to Nebraska with Chief Standing Bear. The federal government eventually terminated the Ponca as a tribe. Then, in 1990, Congress restored the Ponca of Nebraska to federal recognition.
Next, Randolph Mantooth is probably best known for his work in the 1970s medical drama Emergency. Now he's a sought-after national speaker for firefighter and EMS conferences, while still maintaining an active acting career. We caught up with Randolph in Minnesota while he was shooting an emergency preparedness video.
On this day inside of the Mille Lacs Indian Museum, actor Randolph Mantooth, star of the 1970s television series Emergency, is on location shooting an emergency preparedness video.
I owe an incredible debt to firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs. I almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning while I was shooting the show. How embarrassing is that? And my life was saved by 2 firefighter paramedics while I was shooting the show. And about 15 years later, my sister was involved in a horrendous car crash. And her injuries were such that she had to be medevaced out. And while she was on that helicopter, she died. And a firefighter paramedic and a flight nurse brought her back and worked on her until they could get her to the hospital. And 7 years ago, she danced with her son at his wedding in upstate New York. So that's a debt that no one can really pay back, but you can try. And that's why it's so important for me to do what I do.
A lot of the tribes are in the process of developing their own tribal emergency response and preparedness program, which was a directive by President Clinton back in 2000, which was a wonderful gift he did for Indian country. And we were in a talking circle up at a fall emergency managers conference here in Minnesota, and it just happened this issue got brought up again, and some other tribes did the same thing. And the question came up and said, wouldn't it be nice if we could create some type of visual aid that we could present or have our elected officials and program directors watch to understand and visually see what this tribal emergency management and preparedness is and what their duties and responsibilities are. And then hopefully come back to us and say, do we have these things in place? And it just happened in that talking circle that the University of Minnesota School of Public Health happened to be in this circle and heard this common story being told by the members who were attending this talking circle. And they had just happened to have access to grant funding to do such a project.
These are standard.
The University of Minnesota School of Public Health sponsored the video project. And the one thing they were seeking was talent to narrate the production. And they found that in Randolph.
And I knew he was Native, and I thought we would need that type of powerful narrator to do what this video was being asked to do. One part of the video which he wanted to show was a Tribal Emergency Response Committee, or TERC, in operation. And Mille Lacs has one that's been really established for quite a long period of time. And so it made sense for this project to come to Mille Lacs and to see the Mille Lacs Man's TERC doing a simulated exercise, which was part of this video project.
I've watched now for the past 30 years, my goodness gracious, I just did the math, how depressing is that? 30, 35 years, where the tribal reservations, whether it's reservations, whether it's you know, villages, pueblos, rancherias, it goes from not existing at all to being right on the verge of being autonomous in their own health care. We can train our people. Already, there are so many more EMS guys in the field. What I would like to see are paramedics. If the tribes can build casinos, these big, huge, fancy casinos, if they can build those and make them a going concern where they're providing money for the different tribal members, we can also build the infrastructure that we really need, because who knows, I think Monty and I were talking about this, who knows how long this casino thing is going to last.
As an actor and producer, Randolph advocates for wider representation of Native Americans in the entertainment field. But he draws a distinction between being an actor who's Native American and a Native American actor.
When I first started out, there were only two, really, Will Sampson and Chief Dan George. And also a really good friend of mine that I really hung out with, really liked him a lot. He's passed away now. He's from South Dakota, Eddie Little Sky. And Eddie said something really profound to me at the time. He said, "Don't cast yourself as an Indian actor. You'll never make it in this business. You'll be riding horses, being chased by the cavalry for the rest of your career." And he said, "Don't ever deny who you are." He said, "But don't make yourself an Indian actor." And I heard that loud and clear. My whole goal is to change the perception where it doesn't matter if you're an Indian actor, a black actor, a white actor, an Asian actor, you're human actors. Don't tell me that there aren't any Indian doctors. Don't tell me that there aren't any Indian lawyers or Asian lawyers or Asian. We're all human beings. You don't have to say, well, we need an Indian. Go find an Indian. When I directed 3 of the emergency shows, I hired a man by the name of Vince Sincere, who I think was Sioux, but I had met him and knew him, and he was always, an Indian actor. And so I had this role that I wanted to cast, just a truck driver, right? Just a truck driver. He gets into a wreck, and we roll up on the scene and everything. And I told casting, I said, I'd really like to look at Vince Sincere to do this. And they said, oh, he's an Indian actor. I said, yeah. They don't have Indian truck drivers? They went, oh yeah, of course, oh sure, and they brought him in. But had I not had the power to do that, they would have never considered him for it.
After production wrapped up, Randolph's participation in the project was recognized in the manner of how many Native nations honor individuals. He was gifted a blanket.
I just want to thank Monty Frank for working so hard. It took him, 2 years, 3 years to get me up here. The only thing that sort of bothers me is the realization that I am now being referred to as an elder. This is a real privilege and a real honor that you would ask me to do this.
So how important is it to remember the teachings of our elders? How important is that for us?
I think it's essential if we're going to be Native American. Now, a lot of people say your blood quantum is what makes you Indian, and I don't believe that. I believe it's your history and your cultural heritage. Because without that, what makes you different than anyone else, other than the color of your skin? And that's called pedigree. And I don't like to be involved in that. And tribes have to make the call as to who is eligible to be a member based on blood quantum, but they have a right to set it themselves.
Indian Center, Inc. in Lincoln, Nebraska has been serving Native peoples since 1969 and has proven to be an integral and vital part of Lincoln's Human Services Network. We attended the center's powwow, welcoming participants and attendees to the National Congress of American Indians annual mid-year conference.
As the afternoon turned to early evening, a powwow at Indian Center Incorporated welcomes guests from many Native nations attending the National Congress of American Indians mid-year conference in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I was on the original local planning committee, but because of my work, I had to bow out and let others take over. But I continued to support them. If they needed anything, they could call me and I'd help out. But I wasn't part of the, what they call the LPC, Local Planning Committee. Since I've been here, we've kind of had a cultural renaissance. Evidently, I'm the first executive director that was very interested in cultural activities. So we've got our own staff. We've got two staffs, two Eagle staffs. We've got our own drum. We've got our own color guard. And we have, about every other week, we have dances at the Indian Center. And we now have our own powwow. And our powwow is next month. So we're preparing for that, raising the money. And some of these same people will be at our powwow.
As executive director, Tyndall oversees 14 programs that service a number of people on an annual basis.
Primarily, we have human services that help people with, for example, alcoholism counseling, mental health counseling, and then your basic rent assistance, utility assistance, and then we have an employment and training program, a housing program, a large housing program, and a very large food program. Most of our clients are non-Indian, believe it or not, and it's primarily because of our food program. We're obligated to help everybody who comes in the door. Most of our money, I'd say about 70% is federal money, primarily from the Department of Labor and Department of Health and Human Services and Housing and Urban Development. And the rest are state grants and local foundation grants. Last year we served over 72,000 people, most of that with food. We also deliver commodity supplemental food program. We're the only such program, federally funded program in southeast Nebraska. So we are obligated to serve over 4 counties. We serve all the senior citizen programs in Lincoln and some of the surrounding communities as well. But we do that with 1 truck.
Whether it's in the form of providing services to a 4-county area or in the form of cultural activities to the Native community that utilize Indian Center Incorporated, Tyndall values helping others.
Guys, you got cameras? Go ahead and use them. Take your pictures. We're proud of our young people when they graduate.
Our identity depends on our culture, and especially our tribal culture. And without that, we wouldn't have Indian centers anymore. And the people in this city respect that. They acknowledge that we are tribal people, and they support us quite a bit. So other than that, I think it's our identity. Our cultural activities strengthen that identity. So I think in order to keep this going, we keep our young ones interested and help them as much as possible. I remember my grandmother, she really had only one bit of advice, and that we call that washkon. That means do your best, and that means a lot, you know. So whenever, as I went through life and I faced difficulties, I remember what she said, washkon, do your best. If you hit that brick wall, just do your best, find a way around it, you know, and that helped me quite a bit. I welcome you to this part of Nebraska to see our people, and they're very friendly people, and they have a very strong culture, and they're good people, and I love them, you know. This makes me feel great. I really love this, and I'll be sitting here for a while tonight. I got to go home, but I'll probably be back again. But this is dynamite.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, find us at nativereport.org and on Facebook. Thank you for spending this time with us here on Native Report. I'm Stacey Thunder. Hope to see you next time.
Stacey Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.